Game development is a series of conversations. Sometimes those conversations are with other people, but a lot of time that conversation is taking place with the game itself. What do I mean by being in conversation with the game? What I mean is when you make a piece of content, when you add some tech, you integrate it into the game and then take the resulting piece of software and allow it to speak back to you through playing the game. This channel has spent a lot of time talking about processes of development. And I've said things like file it all and let triage sort it out, or finish more things. And I think that sometimes people are misinterpreting or not reaching the right conclusions when I say those things. When I say file it all and let triage sort it out, what I'm saying is that you need to get content into the game so that bugs can be filed against that content so that you can fix those bugs. If all you're doing is shoving content in the game and letting QA file those bugs and then ignoring those bugs, you are accomplishing very little. In fact, it's probably a detriment to your development process. You are clogging up your bug repository. Even if it's well groomed, you are filling it with bugs that are not being addressed. You are building up this technical debt that you are going to have to eventually address. And what you're going to find when you finally stop jamming content in as fast as you can is that technical debt is a lot harder to address months, even years later than it would have been if you had addressed it closer to when the content was introduced. When I say finish more things, I mean finish. And I think that some people have interpreted that as more content is better, get more stuff in the game, don't worry about how it integrates into the overall game. Just shove it in there, just finish more things. But that's not finished. That's just content existing within the game for the sake of existing. The game needs to coalesce as a whole. A long time ago, I did a video about a development process called the Hourglass, where you drive the leadership of the game through the lens of focusing as much as you can on a single goal, of bringing a single piece of content to complete, and then using that piece of content to draw in other parts of the game, doing the things that are necessary to answer the questions that are caused by drawing that single piece of content forward. And I do really believe in that as a development philosophy. But fundamentally, even if you're not doing something like the Hourglass, what you need to be having a conversation with the game. If you are building content and putting it into a shed to be looked at some unknown future date, you're not having a conversation. You're just performing a soliloquy of stating things, and there is no back and forth. If your entire team is doing that, it's a whole bunch of voices being cast into the void, and there's no game coming together until finally you open up all of these different sheds and you start the process of trying to have a conversation. But there is so much backlog of spoken word, of content that's been generated, that the resulting conversation is a cacophony as all of this starts to try to come together. If instead you have this conversation as you go, if you put in a piece of content integrated into the greater whole, see how it integrates into the whole, and file the bugs, fix those bugs, react to each piece of content as you go, you're better able to shape the game as you're going. What you might find is, if you develop in this way, is that your original goals might be wrong, or you might change your mind on what you're trying to do, and the game starts to drift towards something else. As you put in the first series of combat abilities, you realize that your original vision of combat doesn't feel quite right, and you change what you're going for, and then the game moves over here. For some people, that's going to feel really bad, because they have a grand unifying theory of the way the game is supposed to work, and the fact that it's deviating from that is awful. But for me, that's actually a great thing. because very rarely is that initial design, that initial inspiration exactly right. So by having the conversation with your game, you're able to figure out where you are right, where you are wrong, and adjust as you go. If you aren't having a conversation with your game, if you're just shoving content in as fast as possible, then you better hope that initial direction, that initial vision is right. Because if that's the way that you're working, by the time you're able to realize that you've been going down the wrong path, you're going to be really far down that path. And correcting that mistake of vision, that mistake of direction, is going to be nearly impossible, or at the very least, incredibly expensive. For me, video game development is a highly collaborative endeavor. You want as many people as you possibly can on your team to be able to have an impact to the direction that the game is actually going and have their voices come through into the resulting game. And you do that by allowing each piece of content that they make also be in conversation with the game, also be able to influence the way that things are going. You still have central leadership, you still have central vision, but if you are interacting with each new thing that comes online as that vision leader, then you are in a conversation. You are guiding the direction of the game forward. If it's all just going into a warehouse somewhere, then there is no ability to guide anything. People are just executing to a plan, and their abilities, their influences, their ideas are largely being ignored. For some leaders, for some vision holders, that's what they want. They want games to be developed by singular visions. They want the team to be executing to that singular vision. And that can work, and certainly the heights of games built by singular visions can be very high. But there's not a lot of room for failure in that style of game development. Because if you're wrong in that early vision, if you are off base, if you are aiming in the wrong place, you don't have a lot of ability to react to that. Because you set a direction with all of your energy and then fired the project in that direction, and then your ability to change course or steer is highly limited because the project is running largely in the dark. And then at some point you hit that hockey stick moment, the game starts to come together, and only then are you able to actually react to what's been going on for months or even years. For me, if you can increase the visibility earlier, if you can try to tilt the hockey stick up a little bit so more game is coming into being earlier, you regain that reactivity earlier in the process, allowing you to make changes, improve the game before the last few months. Now, having a singular vision, singular control over your project isn't incompatible with having a conversation with your game. Certainly, there are lots of leaders of game teams who lead in that way, who have a conversation with their game, who have other people integrate content, and then they play the result and then give feedback as they go. But the opposite is true. If you are not having a conversation with your game, then you almost need that central control, because otherwise what you have is a whole bunch of people without a clear centralized guiding voice pushing content into a game and then not really seeing what's happening as they are doing it. And the result of even slight deviations in direction is compounding on itself as this pile of content is being developed. If you are a strong, centralized leader, if that's the way you prefer to lead your project, then you still want to have a conversation with your game. If you aren't, if you like the idea of leading through many voices, then you absolutely have to be doing this. Otherwise, you're going to be building up these deviations that you're going to end up having to band-aid over and strap your game together with a big ball of twine at the end in order to make it stick together. Now, arguably, some of this is because I am a story shaper. I did a video a while ago about what I see as being the three kinds of storytellers: story shapers, and story crafters. Story crafters more likely to want that really crisp, clear roadmap up front and then just execute to that roadmap. But as a story shaper, I want this conversation. I want the game to form from the act of creation. And I want to include as many voices as I can in that process. You can be prevented from having a proper conversation with your game. In teams that are running on a starvation diet for a really long time, it can put them into a state where they are able to generate some kinds of content, but not integrate it into the overall game. And this can be a really dangerous place to be, especially if you're in this position for quite a long time. Because as you're warehousing, as you're building up this backlog of content, you're also building a rigidity into the project. So when you move past that, when you start being able to integrate the content that already exists, there's a lot of sunk cost fallacy that enters into your thinking. You don't want to move backwards because you spent all that time building that content. And then when the conversations with the game actually start and you realize that some of the stuff that you made is bad, it can be really hard to do what you need to do, which is to back up, burn down some of that content, and take a different path. So when you hear me say things like finish more things, I mean finish more things, including the integration into the game, including filing and fixing bugs, getting things into a state where they could be shippable. When I say things like file it all and let triage sort it out, I mean file all the bugs that are being encountered and fix most of them right now. Fix most of them in the moment when it is easiest to fix them. Game development is a series of conversations with the team, with the game itself, allowing what the game is doing to speak back to you and allow you to change what you're trying to make based upon what the game is telling you. A special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you're interested in becoming a member, there's a link to that down in the description. We also have a Patreon now, if you're more comfortable supporting the channel in that way. Both patrons and channel members get access to our Discord. So if you are interested in a deeper interaction with this channel's community, that's a great way to get it. This is a bit more of a philosophical video. Does it make sense? I worry that some of the videos that I've done in the past might have been leading some people down the wrong paths. While I believe in making more pots, one of my very earliest videos on the channel, I think that some people are misinterpreting what making a pot actually means. And I worry that people have just been shoving content into their game and not even fully integrating it into the process. And that is a dangerous pattern to follow. Let me know what you think. I will see you again soon. Thank you.